Two 140 RPM hand cannons have slowly but surely risen to the top of the PvP meta in Destiny 2. Fatebringer Time Lost and Palindrome Adept. One is kinetic, one is energy, one drops from the Vault of Glass raid, and the other drops from Grandmaster Nightfalls. Both are extremely powerful choices for PvP thanks to their archetype adaptive, their available perks, and the fact that they are adept weapons, giving them access to adept mods and greater masterwork bonuses than normal guns. So which one is better? Today, I want to take a direct look at perk options between Adept Palindrome and Time Lost Fatebringer, examine the god rolls, consider use cases, consider farming methods, and then finally give you a direct answer about which of these two hand cannons takes the top spot in the PvP meta. Essentially, this is a 2-item tier list. S tier is one rank, and the other rank is S+ tier. Okay, let's put these two head to head. First up, we have the kinetic 140 RPM hand cannon, the Time Lost Fatebringer, which drops from the master difficulty of the Vault of Glass raid. It takes shaders beautifully, it sounds very nice, and the gun model isn't obstructive to your view. The gun's model reminds me a bit of Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, and it stays true to its beautiful original look in Destiny 1. All in all, Time Lost Fatebringer receives an S rating for style and sound. Onto the perks. The current trait perks that drop along the bottom row of every Time Lost Fatebringer as alternate choices are Explosive Payload and Firefly. While Firefly might not be a top tier choice for PvP, Explosive Payload absolutely is top tier because not only does the explosive portion of your bullet have 0 damage fall off, thus extending your effective range, Explosive Payload adds 35% more flinch, which is nuts. Bungie really said screw your opponent and screw their return fire, every single one of your bullets is now a grenade. You can seriously feel the 35% extra flinch when you are dueling someone who has Explosive Payload. It's considerably harder to return fire accurately if they have gotten off the first shot and have a cadence going that you just can't compete with. And vice versa, if you're using Explosive Payload, you will absolutely notice the extended range and difficulty your opponents will experience when trying to stay on target. Plus, you can shoot people around corners with the explosive damage, which is amazing. You can keep people from recovering and sometimes even get kills, and it's easier to hip fire and hit the ground near someone for a bit of damage, which is always nice. I think there is no question that Explosive Payload is the best trait in this column, but if you really enjoy Killing Wind or Tunnel Vision or another trait, that's fine. It's just, I think Explosive Payload really takes this gun a step further, and it is the S+ tier trait for this column. But that's the incredible thing about Time Lost Fatebringer, you just get the S+ tier trait for free on every single roll of Time Lost Fatebringer, which is amazing. Moving on to the other perks on Time Lost Fatebringer, you have things like Eye of the Storm, Frenzy, and Opening Shot in the 4th column, which are all excellent choices. I think Eye of the Storm is the winner here though, but all of these traits set this gun apart from Palindrome's choices in the 4th column. Opening Shot is nice, but I think it is overkill here and kind of a wasted slot because hand cannon accuracy and aim assist cones start out pretty generous, so you should basically always hit your first shot. Opening Shot guarantees this, but I think you should be able to do that yourself and not use a whole perk slot on that. Opening Shot makes more sense on things like snipers and Hawkmoon. Where everyone starts experiencing difficulty is at the end of a duel when your cones have begun worsening and it gets more and more challenging to land shots the more you fire quickly because of the cone mechanic. That's why Eye of the Storm is such a next level choice, because you will inevitably get hurt in a duel and then suddenly you get generous boosts to your accuracy and handling, so you will have a much easier time landing the killing blow on your opponent. That's because as you fire, your accuracy cone widens and your aim assist cone shrinks, making it more likely you will miss shots, so Eye of the Storm directly counters this and gives you a significant upper hand at the end of your duel against a skilled player, which is really important. I think Frenzy and Kill Clip are also fine here because they make it easier to achieve a kill, changing the kill requirement even if they don't change your time to kill or TTK. For Frenzy, you need 2 crits and 1 body shot to kill, and for Kill Clip, you need only 1 crit and then 2 body shots to kill. So those are nice, but this brings up an extremely important part of how we value perks on weapons. If you are going for a slay out clip generating roll, then by all means grab that Kill Clip, that Frenzy, that Rampage, whatever you want, and you will do some real damage in 6v6 modes and get some nice clips. But if you primarily enjoy more competitive modes like 3v3 elimination, survival, or scrimmages, and winning those matches, then you should really be choosing perks that are always on and always working in your favor, rather than things that only give you a benefit after a kill. Because in survival and trials, all you really need is 1 kill, so you want your gun to give you all the help it can during the duel, not after you get a kill. And I know Frenzy doesn't need a kill, but Eye of the Storm is still just a bit better. As far as I'm concerned, once somebody gets a pick in trials, the round is likely over already. The team who is down a player has likely just lost the round. All this is to say, I truly believe Eye of the Storm is the best trait in this column for competitive PvP, but I think there is wiggle room here in this one trait column of what is truly optimal, so really go with your heart. With the other columns though, I think there are clear, objectively optimal choices, but here is the one column where it is personal preference. When it comes to the Barrel, Magazine, and Masterwork perks, I think there are some objectively optimal choices on the Time Lost Fatebringer. First up, Accurize Rounds. This one is easy. The other magazine perks are fine, but they don't come anywhere close to how much benefit you get from the plus 10 range that Accurize Rounds gives. Without Accurize Rounds, your Time Lost Fatebringer is not a god roll. In a similar vein, I want you to get that good old range masterwork because pushing your range stat out a bit more is extremely important on 140 RPM hand cannons, especially because of the growing threats of SMGs, abilities, sidearms, and slug shotguns, which all dominate ranges below 20 meters. Not to mention 120 RPM hand cannons hanging out in the mid 30 meter range, which are still quite good, even though we are trending to a 140 RPM hand cannon meta at this time. So all in all, getting Accurize Rounds and a range masterwork is absolutely the god roll on a Time Lost Fatebringer, and I really think you need to aim for these two to take the gun to that next level if you really want to call your roll a quote-unquote god roll. Long story short, you should eke out as much range as possible on your 140 RPM hand cannons, including Time Lost Fatebringer, so long as you aren't compromising your handling and stability. I'll make this brief. Stability is extremely important on hand cannons, and if you are a mouse and keyboard player who thinks it doesn't, you're just wrong. It has a massive impact on your gameplay as well as it does for controller players, and believing it doesn't means you are ignoring a core part of how gunplay works in Destiny 2. This is really important. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but as guns fire in Destiny, their aim assist cones shrink and their accuracy cones widen, so your shots are much more likely to miss at the end of a gunfight. By the time your third shot rolls around in dueling with a 140 RPM hand cannon, it is highly likely you will miss due to this intrinsic mechanic in the game, where you receive less aim assist and lower accuracy as you fire, meaning more chance to experience bloom and miss your final shot even if you were aiming precisely. But having a higher stability stat on your gun combats this growing inaccuracy as you continue to fire your gun. Stability does reduce the recoil animation severity, yes, which really makes it easier to hit successive shots no matter your input method, but it also has a massive impact on whether or not the game is going to even allow you to hit that third hand cannon shot, or if it will oddly miss for some reason. If you want the most consistency possible so you aren't fighting this mysterious opponent we sometimes call bloom, then it's extremely important you hit a stability stat of at least 68. This was discovered last year by Cool Guy, who is an excellent Destiny 2 content creator who did a big research project on hand cannon stability. He discovered that 68 is the magic number. That is where any stability value lower feels noticeably worse, and currently one assumption is that 68 is the peak stability point at which your aim assist cone's speed of how quickly it grows again kind of tops out, because stability helps improve your aim assist cone reset more quickly when you stop shooting for a moment. Going higher than 68 feels nice, especially when dueling on mouse and keyboard, but 68 is a really healthy spot of avoiding all the bad stuff beneath 68 while at the same time not overcompensating too much by going higher into this stat when you still need to be investing in range and handling as well. By all means, go higher than 68 and it'll feel great, your aim assist will be better and you will suffer less bloom, but my current hypothesis is that the speed at which your aim assist cone grows again after a shot likely doesn't shrink that much faster after you hit 68 stability. So all in all, 68 appears to be the perfect peak of avoiding bad aim assist cones but not over-investing stat points. Again, it is a theory about the aim assist cone reset timer peak offering diminishing returns. It might just be a linear increase to the value the more stability you have. But at the very least, we know 68 is a perfect magic number of recoil reduction and does provide a healthy boost to combating aim assist cone degradation. I promise you, no matter what input method you use, having a stability stat of 68 or higher will feel considerably better than other hand cannons that have less stability, and you will find yourself 3-tapping opponents with ease. Now, stability is extremely important for hand cannon duels, yes, but equally important, or maybe even more so, is handling. Let me share a secret with you that will blow your mind and change your Destiny PvP gameplay forever. Handling is your TTK. In Destiny PvP, handling is your TTK. I'm not joking at all. This game's meta has dramatically swerved away from duels only involving primary weapons, and it is actually rare to get a fight with someone, a 1v1, where you both start at full health, no abilities interfere, and you both only use primary weapons. That is very rare in this game. These days, and probably until the end of time in Destiny PvP, handling will be your TTK. Handling is everything in Destiny PvP. It is the endgame. Destiny PvP is all about having the right tool for the job out in your hands at the right time. There is no one right tool for all scenarios. Well, the best PvP players in Destiny constantly have the right tool out for the job at the right time, and the only way they're able to do this is handling. But so can you. With high handling, you can always be prepared for whatever you encounter on the battlefield, and you can swap to your secondary or cleanup weapons during fights with so much more ease. No matter how unpredictable your enemy may be, which good opponents certainly are, if you have high handling, you can at least have a chance at countering them and their speed. When having the quick draw perk on both weapons used to mean instant swap and ready speeds for both weapons before the nerf, it was a no-brainer to run 2 quick draw guns at the same time, and it was extremely necessary to have quick draw on your weapons for this reason in endgame PvP, because everyone else did. Everyone else was fast, smart, and exclusively primary gunfights just weren't happening back then. And these days they aren't really either. And I don't believe they ever will, considering Bungie's vision for PvP where abilities accentuate the gunplay and special weapons do exist. And I think that's totally fine. It makes the sandbox very interesting. Although I do think having one playlist where special ammo and abilities are highly nerfed could be super fun. And because of all these tools like abilities, special weapons, and primaries that people bring into fights, it is extremely important that you have high handling to counter all of these different situations with your toolkit. Because Destiny PvP fights don't only involve primary weapons, you really need to be able to switch to your other weapons to finish fights. This is a core pillar of how Destiny PvP flows through each fight, and players who are able to swap between their weapons whenever they need them are at a massive advantage over everyone else. This is why exotics like Ophidian Aspect and Dragon Shadow have become so popular these days, because they provide a massive handling boost for just playing the game, allowing you to be faster than your opponent. Think about it this way, if you're fighting a skilled opponent, it won't matter if they think of a better play than you if they can't get the gun out that they need to make that play happen. If you can get your tools out more quickly to get the job done, you are going to win your gunfights because you will have the speed and thus the flexibility to do whatever play you can dream of. If you don't believe me, I promise you, pay attention to handling throughout your PvP experience in the next few weeks, try using a setup with higher handling, and see if your performance increases. I think you'll notice a big improvement. If there is one thing I wish I could shout from the rooftops of the Destiny community other than Elemental Capacitor is the best perk in the game, it would be that handling is your TTK and handling is the end game. It blew my mind when I first heard this, and I hope it blows your mind too, because it is seriously game-changing. So this is why I'm about to tell you to put Fluted Barrel on your Time Lost Fatebringer over any other barrel perk, and that's because it gives you a massive plus 14 handling in addition to plus 4 stability. That is a massive improvement you will feel in every gunfight. There is simply no other barrel perk that is just dumping a whopping 18 extra stat points into your gun in one perk. Not to mention, it's dumping a majority of those points into probably the most important stat there is in PvP, which is handling. And I say most important because while stability and range give you consistency and sometimes allow you to play a little bit outside of the intended range Bungie gives a weapon, trying to push a weapon's intended range more than the developers mean for it to have really only gets you so far. And simply playing to a weapon's strengths and intended range almost always yields higher benefits to you. That's why I think handling is equally important, if not more important, in endgame PvP than range and stability. Now, if you are using something like Ophidian Aspect or Dragon Shadow or a ton of mods to boost your weapon handling, you can get away with not using Fluted Barrel on your hand cannon, and in that case, the most optimal barrel perk for your Time Lost Fatebringer is going to be Hammer Forged Rifling, because it doesn't subtract any stats from your setup and just gives you a nice +9 boost to your range and calls it good. And that's nice and all, but still, when you look at what that does for you, that is only extending your damage drop-off point by a single meter, which is like almost nothing in Destiny PvP, especially considering this gun comes with explosive payload on every single roll for free. If you really want another meter of range, step your character forward what feels like an inch in the game and you'll get it for taking one step forward. But if you really don't need the extra handling, take the +9 range. You may as well. But honestly, at the end of the day, most people in almost all use cases are just better off with Fluted Barrel because of how unbelievably generous it is in giving you stat points. It is the barrel that gives you the most bang for your buck. It is seriously a PvP game-changing barrel perk. Alright, that wraps up what the Godroll Time Lost Fatebringer is for PvP, Range Masterwork, Fluted Barrel, Accurized Rounds, Explosive Payload, and Eye of the Storm. I've discussed this with several people, played with several Godroll Time Lost Fatebringers, and I really think this is the best roll you can get. I know it might feel weird to not go for max range on this thing by foregoing rangy barrels, but if you just simply look at the numbers, you're getting barely any benefit from going for a rangy barrel perk, and Fluted Barrel is just way better. Fatebringers with high handling and explosive payload are what will dominate any PvP lobby today. I promise you, this is the Godroll Fatebringer for competitive PvP. Now let's see how it stacks up against its competitor. For the second and final item on this tier list, we have the Adept Palindrome. This Void Energy 140 RPM hand cannon drops from Grandmaster Nightfalls. It takes shaders quite nicely, it sounds lovely, and the gun model isn't obstructive to your view. Not to mention, it's faithful to its memorable and lovely look from Destiny 1. Nostalgia points for sure, just like Fatebringer. All in all, Adept Palindrome receives an S rating for style and sound, just like Time Lost Fatebringer. Onto the perks. The curated perks you can alternatively swap to that you get on every Adept Palindrome currently dropping are Bottomless Grief and One for All. Bottomless Grief is actually a great choice for PvP in this column because the other choices are not terribly amazing, and getting a larger magazine for your 140 RPM hand cannon in the Crucible, 14 shots to be precise, is actually very nice compared to Time Lost Fatebringer's 10 bullets. Now, the other competitive options in this third column are Killing Wind and Quick Draw. Killing Wind is a personal preference, and it is certainly good after a kill, but analyzing a gun after a kill is not what we're doing here, because we want our guns to be S tier right from the beginning, even against good opponents who might not let you kill them for those fun pub stomping perks. So I think Quick Draw actually takes the cake in this column, even though it was recently nerfed. Quick Draw still provides 100 handling when you are swapping to your gun, which is nice, but the bonus goes away when you ADS or swap away again, so you're still going to need high handling elsewhere, like in the barrel, the masterwork, or your armor perks or mods. And by the way, for both of these guns, you should definitely be using a hand cannon targeting mod to improve that aim down sight speed of your hand cannon, which is key, not to mention the little boost to aim assist. Long story short, when it comes to the third column of Adept Palindrome, I think it is personal preference, and you could make an argument for Killing Wind being the choice, but I personally think the pick is Quick Draw because I'm evaluating these roles for competitive PvP, where getting a kill is not always easy, and chaining together kill streaks is not really a thing against skilled opponents. I would say Bottomless Grief is top tier as well for the magazine boost, but you get that on every palindrome, so it doesn't get a slot in the God Roll picker. The other reason Quick Draw gets to be the God Roll pick is because sniper rifles are popular and the most powerful special weapon in the game, in skilled hands that is, and having Quick Draw on your hand cannon to clean up after sniping or using any special weapon is extremely powerful in Destiny, where handling is your secret, real TTK. Moving on to the fourth column, the trait perk I would go for here is absolutely Rangefinder. Look, I know sometimes people don't like the added zoom, but this one perk just gives you 3 more meters of effective range for free, which is pretty dang nice. All of the other options are fine, I suppose, but Rangefinder is really the next level choice for competitive PvP. Now, that said, it is really important to note that if you get high impact reserves, this perk can actually be super good in competitive PvP on Palindrome. If you start at 7 rounds in your Adept Palindrome, which is like close to the start of the magazine without Bottomless Grief, you can kill anyone 4 resilience or lower with 2 crits and 1 body shot. If you start at 5 rounds on a high impact reserves palindrome, you can kill anyone at 5 resilience or lower if you just hit 2 crits and 1 body shot, so long as your permutation, that's the order of your shots, is body crit crit or crit body crit. You just must end in a critical shot. That's how it stacks up with the growing damage boost the lower your magazine gets. And then if you start at 4 rounds with a high impact reserves pally, you can kill anyone at 6 resilience or lower if you just hit 2 crits and 1 body shot, in any order you please. Starting at 4 rounds is a little dubious because you can only kill 1 person with that magazine and only miss 1 shot. But there's more. Because every Adept Palindrome gets Bottomless Grief for free, which is an excellent perk because it boosts your magazine to 14 rounds, if you also roll high impact reserves, you get to start reaping those ease of TTK benefits earlier because the high impact reserves damage boost starts earlier because your magazine is larger. Here's the breakdown for a Bottomless Grief plus high impact reserves Adept Palindrome. Starting at 9 rounds, you can kill anyone 2 resilience or lower if you land 2 crits and 1 body shot. Starting at 7 rounds, you can kill anyone 5 resilience or lower if you land 2 crits and 1 body shot with the same permutation I mentioned earlier, which is either body crit crit or crit body crit. Essentially, just if you start at 7 rounds, shoot in whatever order you prefer, but the last shot has to be a crit. Unfortunately, the last shot is always the hardest to hit. Then, if you start at 6 rounds with your Bottomless Grief Adept Pally, you can kill any Guardian at 6 resilience or lower if you land 2 crits and 1 body shot, in any order or permutation that you please. And that, in my opinion, is what makes High Impact Reserve such an S tier choice, because most people are running 6 resilience max these days. And if you just remember 6 resilience, 6 in the mag, you can confidently 3-tap anyone and only have to hit 2 crits, which, if you remember, was part of the reason 120 RPM hand cannons were such a menace a couple months ago. So Adept Palindrome actually has an epic secret in High Impact Reserves, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you can just empty your magazine a bit before a duel and you are giving yourself a way easier time to hit an optimal TTK than your opponent because you can hit one less critical shot. And as we know, at the end of any hand cannon duel, hitting that third shot is going to be noticeably harder than the first shot due to your aim assist and accuracy cones worsening. So long story short, don't sleep on high impact reserves in PvP for Palindrome. It is absolutely a powerful choice, especially when you're using Bottomless Grief, but because it is slightly niche compared to Rangefinder, which you never have to think about, I would say Rangefinder is likely the pick here if we're going for true epic god roll for all situations. Unless of course you don't enjoy or can't handle using Rangefinder because of the zoom, which is how I am, in which case you should go for high impact reserves. I also just want to mention that after I finished recording and was halfway through editing this video, Drewski put out a great video explaining why high impact reserves is his choice over Rangefinder on Adept Pally. So after this video, that might be a good one to watch if you want to weigh which perk choice in this column is really right for you. Moving on, and this section is going to be quick, much like Time Lost Fatebringer, I'm going to recommend a ranged masterwork to push out your dueling distance, which is pretty potent on a 140 RPM hand cannon, and furthermore, I'm going to recommend high caliber rounds for the 5 added range points and 7% added flinch. Because Adept Palindrome is already at around that 68 threshold for weapon stability, which is a sweet spot of getting plenty of bang for your buck and not going too high so you get diminishing returns, I think high cals is the optimal choice even over ricochet rounds, especially considering one of the other most popular weapons Palindrome will be dueling is Time Lost Fatebringer, which will have explosive rounds on every roll. So you want to be dealing as much flinch as possible to your opponents too, because they will absolutely be flinching your shots with that explosive payload. And then finally, I of course chose Fluted Barrel because the 9 range you get from Hammerforged Rifling only gives you like 1.5 meters more before you start experiencing damage fall off, whereas the Fluted Barrel gives you that massive 18 extra stat points in stats that you will actually feel and actually cause you to win more fights rather than just 1 more meter range. Just like last time, if you already main Ophidians or Dragon Shadow or found another way to get super high handling, feel free to go for Hammerforged Rifling, but honestly, Fluted is likely the top tier play here for a majority of use cases. So, we have finally reached the moment of truth. Here are the 2 most optimal S+ tier certified crispy god rolls for competitive PvP, the best of the best you can get. So how do they stack up against each other? Well, interestingly, they're very, very similar. When you look at the point at which each gun starts experiencing damage fall off, it looks like Palindrome wins by about 3 meters. And to be honest, this is entirely because of Rangefinder adding extra zoom to the gun and thus extending its effective range. If you just don't like Rangefinder or prefer a different perk like High Impact Reserves, then the range difference between these two is basically identical. But since we are analyzing the god rolls here, let's put them head to head. And what I see here is 3 meters of difference, which is a win for Palindrome, but honestly, I don't believe it is a game changer when Time Lost Fatebringer has explosive payload, which noticeably extends its effective range because the explosive portion of each individual bullet has 0 damage drop off. So as far as I'm concerned, these two are essentially tied in the range department, but if you aren't using explosive payload on your Fatebringer, then Palindrome wins. Then when we come down to stability, they are tied as well, with only a single point of difference, which is imperceptible. Both have excellent stability, hitting that magic number of 68, which makes dueling much easier, especially at the end of your fights. On to handling, the secret TTK stat. And we see that Fatebringer has 5 more handling, which is nice, but not very noticeable, if at all. Tied again. Reload speed, basically tied. Aim assist, 5 higher on Fatebringer, which is actually nice, but still quite small, so it's basically a tie. Recoil direction, tied. Magazine, tied. Ability to socket adept mods, tied. Bonus to all masterwork stats for masterworking, tied. Style, tied. Sound, tied. They are just neck and neck in every single category, which makes sense because if we look at their base stats with no perks or mods, they are starting out almost identical. So since they both have excellent perk selections, in picking god rolls, we are just taking 2 guns that are already intrinsically amazing and creating 2 even beefier stat monsters here that will tear each other apart in PvP. So, does one rise above the other? Well, in one little category, yes, and that is flinch. Currently, explosive payload adds a whopping 35% more to flinch to your opponent's screen if you shoot them with explosive payload, and since Adept Palindrome can't roll that and only adds plus 7% flinch with high caliber rounds, Time Lost Fatebringer takes the cake here. Not to mention the cool ability explosive payload has to shoot enemies around cover and have 0 damage fall off over longer ranges. Now, if explosive payload ever gets nerfed, which it really should to be balanced, then these 2 guns fall back into a neck and neck ranking both at S tier. However, flinch isn't the only place these 2 start to deviate further when you examine 2 extremely important factors to any gun in PvP, and that is pairings and farming ability. Your top tier special weapon pairing choices for Palindrome are going to be extremely good, don't get me wrong. Think things like Chaperone, Bastion, Eye of Soul, Succession, Bite of the Fox, Ignition Code, Reese Walker, Astral Horizon, Blasphemer, and Toil and Trouble. But when you stack that team of kinetic specials up against your energy pairings you'd pair with a Time Lost Fatebringer, you see another deviation where Fatebringer rises above just a bit. Your energy weapon pairings with Fatebringer are going to be a bit better than your Palindrome pairings. Think things like Duality, frickin' Lord of Wolves, Borealis, Cloudstrike, Fighting Lion, I'm not joking one bit, or things like Felwinter's Lie, for God's sakes, or Found Verdict, which is the new Felwinters, or Retold Tale, Seven Seraph CQC, literally any of the 5 special grenade launchers in the energy slot, or any of the god tier sniper rifles like Adored or Frozen Orbit, which are both extremely lethal and highly accessible compared to the kinetic sniper options. Or Uzume RR4, for God's sakes, which is an unbelievably good sniper that's farmable in Nightfalls for anyone, and it can socket adept mods, which is huge. So when it comes down to special weapon pairings in PvP, Fatebringer wins here. While the special pairings for Adept Palindrome are S tier choices in PvP, when you stack them up against the Time Lost Fatebringer pairings, Fatebringer just rises to S+. There's just no beating the accessibility and sheer power of the special weapon choices you can pair with a Fatebringer, like any of those snipers I mentioned, Felwinters, Found Verdict, or Lord of Wolves, or any of the several energy grenade launchers. Now again, if a mind-blowing broken special kinetic weapon suddenly rises to the top of PvP, then I think Fatebringer and Palindrome fall into an equal ranking once again, so long as explosive payload is nerfed as well. But these days, there's a third way that Palindrome fails to compete with Fatebringer. Adept Palindrome is straight up harder to farm than Time Lost Fatebringer, which is kinda nuts considering Time Lost Fatebringer is only dropping in Master Vault of Glass raids. Palindrome had a chance out of 3 guns to drop this season for a single week. Time Lost Fatebringer will continue to be available maybe forever whenever you want to farm it, and you can target farm it, which is huge. While a Master Vault of Glass raid might seem scary to you, it's actually just like doing a Grandmaster Nightfall when you think about the enemy power level, but in Master raids, your power level can exceed and rise to that challenge level, whereas your power is capped below all enemies in Grandmaster, so eventually, in a Master Vault of Glass run, you can have an easier time than in a GM. And even though completing a Master Vault of Glass run is no easy task, anyone can do it, and it is free-to-play content. And you don't get reset to the beginning of the whole thing like you do if you wipe in a Grandmaster. And you don't have to do the whole Master VoG in one run. Not to mention, there are plenty of raiders out there getting more and more skilled at Master VoG every day, some of whom you can find on our community Discord server, which you should join. But then once you do complete a Master Vault of Glass, and you get to the end, you can just buy Time Lost Fatebringers over and over again, because once you get a single drop from the Templar, which is guaranteed, you can just buy Time Lost Fatebringers from the kiosk at the end of the raid using your Spoils of Conquest. And farming spoils is extremely easy. I spent 4 hours last Friday night farming spoils from the normal Templar encounter, which is really easy and fast, and now I have like 400 ready to go, so I can buy like 17 Time Lost Fatebringers now. I'm almost guaranteed to get a good roll, whereas with Adept Palindrome, I farmed that GM like over 40 times in one weekend, and I did get a god roll, but that was truly a lucky shot in the dark, and my poor friend Nick didn't even get one god roll. Sorry buddy, rest in peace. So even though a Master Vault of Glass completion is hard, farming an Adept Palindrome doesn't even come close to the ease of farming a Time Lost Fatebringer. So here we are, everything laid out evenly, the god rolls chosen, the perks considered, the stats analyzed, the pairings compared, the farming methods discussed. To me, it is clear that Time Lost Fatebringer takes the trophy. Both of these hand cannons are beefy stat monsters and are beautiful S tier choices for PvP, and you can absolutely slay out with either of them. But at the end of the day, those Time Lost Fatebringer loadouts are just gonna edge out the Palindrome competition ever so slightly. These guns were almost totally tied in this competition, meaning both will service your PvP experience extremely well, but the places where Time Lost Fatebringer pulled ahead in the race were the ease of farming, the weapon pairings, and finally the fact that explosive payload is such an incredibly S+ tier perk in PvP and doesn't drop in Palindrome. So that's the verdict I've found, and I hope it was helpful to see it all laid out. If you want suggestions on farming Adept Palindromes or Time Lost Fatebringers, or you have suggestions for others, please let us all know in the comments, or vocalize your opinion about the true optimal god roll for either gun if you feel like I may have gotten it wrong. I read every comment and I truly am interested to hear your take. At the end of the day, either of these will do amazing because they are Adept 140 RPM hand cannons with good perks and good pairings, but Time Lost Fatebringer is our king today. If Palindrome becomes easier to farm and gets better special weapon pairings and explosive payload is nerfed, then they fall back into a tie. But today, Time Lost Fatebringer is the winner. Alright, best of luck farming whatever it is you want. You got this. Remember, handling is your TTK, both of these guns rule, and you should just play whatever you have fun with. Thanks for watching, and catch you later. Bye bye.